Finally, we are live. Hello and welcome to Bergkamp Wonderland. We are officially an Arteta in podcast. I think we are. Are we, Ellis? I think we are. I think we mostly are. Anyway, people don't know you're there yet, so I'll move on. Right, with me tonight, I forgot to mute my own channel. I'm a bit dazed because it took about 30 seconds for the show to start rather than the usual 5 seconds. You don't need to know that. And here are my beautiful guests. First of all, it's get your pots and pans out, ladies and gentlemen. Round of applause. It's the man who saves lives by a daily basis. It's our Ellis. Hi, Ellis.
Hi.
Do you had anyone come into the A&E with anything stuck up their bum that was interesting lately?
Not lately, actually, no. It's been quite a low number of people coming in with that. I think the global pandemic must be easing up a bit and people are less bored at home with stuff that they can put up their ass.
How have you been? How is your lovely missus and the two little sprogs?
Still quite tired. She just finished a 12-hour shift. We're meant to be on a team training day on the computer pub. But got cancelled and she got called in. But luckily I didn't get to go in. But yeah, she's knackered, bless her. But it is what it is.
It can't be easy saving lives and looking after you because you are quite a handful.
Well, she is my main carer. She does have a lot on her plate.
That's good. I hope you're nice to her for it.
No.
Oh, good. Wouldn't expect anything less, but I'm just going to go and stick that there and do another tweet. There you go, because I've got to press all the buttons, people, and I've got to introduce people. Next up is Fergus from Guns and Ribbons, another Arsenal podcast that I've heard quite a few times. He's been busy going around another podcast, not quite like Mike Feinberg, who has become a podcast tart. How are you doing, Fergus?
I'm good, yeah. From Guns and Yellow Ribbons. We're Guns and Ribbons on Twitter just because we ran out of characters. The characters like Mike Feinberg. So, but yeah. No, glad to be on here. Thanks for the invite.
So, tell us a little bit about your podcast if people want to go and find it before we start saying anything remotely interesting.
Okay, so my podcast has been running audio originally, and then it's gone on to video for about a year and a half or so. John has been on it as well, Guns and Yellow Ribbons. It's basically the concept is four guys, four Arsenal fans down the pub having a beer, talking football. It's not ranty, it's not shouty, it's not there to get clicks and clickbait and all that sort of stuff. It's just genuine Arsenal fans just talking Arsenal.
You do know you're going to get nowhere doing that, don't you? That's why we get nowhere anymore. People only know us because we've been around so long.
Listen, it's a hobby, and if people want to watch me do my hobby, I come and join us.
Because we all know if you want to get anywhere in the YouTube world of Arsenaling, and I suppose it's just YouTube and podcasting, the more you shout and scream, the better it is. And we don't do that. In fact, we barely even disagree. We just go, you don't agree with what I said? Oh, well, never mind. We'll just move on. Also, with us tonight is John in lovely warm Miami, who has just told me I can come and live with him. He's having an entire house built for me, and I'll be there on Tuesday. No, it's Tuesday. It's Wednesday. I'm late. Hello, John.
It's okay. We have it all ready for you. Just got to come in. We have a nice spread out there, so it's all good. Thanks for having me on. It's always a good time. It's
always good to have you on. I've just spent the last 2 hours watching a bloke on Twitch off the coast of Miami, and he was catching sharks and releasing them on a boat on his own. Why do people catch sharks and release them? Why don't they just leave them alone?
Great question. I think they should leave the sharks alone. And I love the sharks because I used to go out scuba diving, and it's so cool to actually see them out there. I feel like people who scuba dive are the only people in the world who will jump into the water when someone yells shark versus the opposite. And that might just be something wrong with me. I don't know, but I'm definitely against whatever that is.
There's a list of things in life that I know I don't need to try to know I don't like them. Smoking, a night of passion with Ellis, skydiving, swimming with sharks. 4 things I've never done, and I don't think I'm ever going to do. So sorry, Ellis, and
bitch.
I'll never skydive, so we're there on that one.
And so I'm not interested in any of those things for anybody that tries to offer it. But I cannot think of anything worse than being nibbled by a miserable shark. So the little ones, the ones that are about 4 foot long, do they bite? Because he didn't seem to be overly bothered as he was patting it on the head.
No, they're not. Those are probably like nurse sharks are very docile. Like the ones that are really aggressive are like the tiger sharks. Those are the ones that'll go after you.
You go by the name. Okay, so docile are okay. Tiger are terrible.
Not terrible. There's no such thing as no.
Chris
I like
loves
sharks. I like sharks.
Chris loves them. He
yeah.
does stuff. He runs marathons for sharks.
That's awesome.
Personally, I'm not interested in sharks. I'm more of a dolphin man.
Okay, fair enough.
Anyway, right, let's stop talking jibber jabber, and I'm going to say hello to some of the people in the chat. There's Stefan, who was there early, and he's a mushroom. And then who else is there? I can never remember what his name is. I know what his name is on the Twitter, but on here, Adarius. He's probably waiting to defrost somewhere in the coldest parts of Russia. There's Matt Roberts there. There's Michael in Sweden. Paul Neal. There's Fergus and Phil Macker. Avon Ted. Oh, he's changed his name. He shortened it. He's got rid of the Ington. That's okay. I don't know who that
Bing
is.
Bong with that then, Bing Bong Avon's here.
Do they even do that anymore? My mum's always after a nice Avon representative so she can buy overpriced schmutter that she was never going to use for people that don't want it. And then Guna and controversial from Ellis. He said dolphins are the C word. Stefan,
he's actually not wrong there, to be honest.
Are they? I don't know.
Yeah, they're like one of the only other animals that'll kill other creatures for fun and no survival benefit for it. They'll just play with them until they drown, or they'll do some other very nefarious things that we don't have to get into on this podcast. But I'm with them.
Much like humans.
Yeah, they're really smart.
Basically scum. Excellent. Right, Ellis, we'll start with you because you know what I'm going to come up with. People, this could be the shortest segment of ABW's 8 seasons of talking waffle. Ellis, what can we take from the Olympiacos and the West Ham games, if anything? Have we ever been 3-0 down and come back for a win or a draw? I've added the second part just because the first part could be a one-word answer.
Well, if I answered like Fergus would, then it'd be a very quick podcast, wouldn't it? I'm going to try to draw it out a bit, I suppose, to get some likes and some views. It's. I don't think we've learnt much, really. We've learnt that we can be quite bad, and we've also learnt that we can be quite good. I think a 3-3 draw is a fair reflection of where we are in the league, really. We're 9th. Are we 9th now? We are 9th, aren't we? That might be fake news. 9th or 10th. We're about mid-table. So I think
we are where we've been for months. Up a bit, down a bit, up a bit.
I try not to look at that table. It upsets me.
We are indeed 9th.
I think that performance sort of summarises where we are as a team, really. Sometimes we can be very bad. Sometimes we can be quite good. And that's why we are mid-table, because we're just not really blowing teams away. It was a frustrating game, but also ended better than what it could have done. I think West Ham would probably be, out of the two sides or the two sets of fans, West Ham would probably be the more agreed with that result than we are. And as for the Olympiacos game, I had it on my laptop, and Scylla was watching some program about Caroline Fack, and I think I paid more attention to that than I did for the 90 minutes of the football that was actually on. So again, that game didn't really show us much either.
You can always tell how good a game is by what I've done. My big TV, I've not turned it on in 3-4 months. It's only there. Everything I do, I've got a 32-inch for my PC, and the entire time I spend at the PC, and so I tell how good a game is by how long it is before I go and check Twitter and go and check Amazon and go and do my Tesco shop, and then just shopping, and then go and have the game on in the background. And that Olympiacos game, I maybe saw 15 minutes of it. You could still see straight away that something wasn't up. We weren't going out there to try and win the game, and what's his name, Socrates and his mates were there coming to hurt us, and I was quite worried about that. So, if in a one-word answer, Ellis, yes or no? Did we learn anything?
No.
Talking of no, Fergus, do you reckon you could expand on that? No, or are you just going to stick with your original pre-pod no?
I was being flippant when I said you could answer that all in seconds.
No, you've been truthful.
The Olympiacos game was quite a difficult game to go into, in the sense that it's always difficult to manage a 3-1 when you're winning 3-1 in a two-legged game. So what do you do? Do you go all out, get the early goal, and then put the game to bed? Or do you sit there and absorb the pressure, which is what I think we did. We just managed it. We got no injuries, and we went into the next game against West Ham. We looked a bit tired, lethargic. I was really disappointed that it was 35 minutes before we even turned up and started playing. We might as well have been in the dressing room and just let them take pot shots at the goal. The first goal, I don't think we could have done very much about. The second goal, there's an argument to say, yeah, hi, Trev. There's an argument to say, about should you have to wait for the referee to give permission to take a quick free kick like that? But, there's no rule saying you have to wait for that. And the third goal is a bit messy. We could have gone on and won it. They could have gone on and won it. It could have been 6-0. 6-6, sorry. Did we learn anything out of it? We learned that Odegaard is excellent and we needed to pull out the stops to try and secure his position on a permanent. I learned that Leno is still consistently inconsistent. I learned that Arteta really doesn't know what way to line some of the players up. Why put Chambers, who did have a fantastic game, why put him on when Cedric works really well on that wing with I think Pepe started or whoever started on that wing. I'm a little bit confused. I am Arteta in, just for the record, and I am until December, by which stage I think we should have seen huge improvements and big improvements to the squad as well along the way. Does that answer your question more than no?
Yeah, I think you do make a good point where no matter if he'd gone for it and we'd have lost, people have gone, that's it. He doesn't know what he's doing. And if he went out there to play defensive football to try and hold the lead, because at 3-1 they're never going to score 3 goals, and so that would be the logical thing to do, just go out there, take up the pressure, boring game, get it out of the way, and get through. Then he can't win that way either. It's I think it's more down to us Arsenal fans never being happy no matter what happens.
Yeah, to be honest, the Twitter sphere, Facebook sphere of Arsenal fans is just toxic, and you'll get one guy who will be delighted and think it's fantastic, and get another guy who will have an argument to say why it's absolutely crap. But I give up on it. I don't even bother anymore.
Apparently, Phil didn't see the first 3 goals of the West Ham game. It was at M&S getting some vino, and for me, they won 3-0.
That's a fair point.
And your Trev from he does your podcast with you, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. He's on.
It's Hills. Oh yeah, Hill. I was going to say, isn't that Hillsy? Yes.
Yes.
We learnt that we don't give up even when we're 3 goals down. John, have you ever known us to go 3-0 down and then come back to get anything out of the game? Especially, it was 3-0 at half time, wasn't it?
I mean, it's been a long time. I think the last time was Wenger, I want to say, against Bournemouth.
3-1 at halftime.
It was. I'm sorry.
3-1 at halftime.
Yeah, it was 3-1 at halftime because we got pulled a goal back from Lacazette.
Still not seen the game.
yeah. Lacazette had a pretty amazing goal. I mean, I think there was a deflection, but it was still. I mean, he hit that thing. So, I think didn't we come back from 3-0 against Bournemouth under Wenger at one point? I think that was like the last time we came down from 3-0 down. It's been a while, but it's one of those. I think someone mentioned it in one of the comments. It's super important to have a win like that if you're building a team. And the reason it's super important to have a win like that if you're building a team is because you want to know that even when it seems like all the odds are against you, you have a team that's in form, you're away from home, you can still come up and make something happen and score some goals. So that's an important thing to have in your locker from a mentality perspective, which is arguably the biggest thing that the coach has been trying to instill in this Arsenal side, this lack of a mentality, this lack of accountability. Like, clearly that is what we're seeing, these kind of changes when people are like, what are we changing in this side? These are the kind of results that we could point to and say, look, maybe it's just the one of, but we've seen us come back from behind with this team before. You don't get that sinking, it's all over feeling anymore that Arsenal used to get when they would concede a goal. And it's partially because of the players not slouching down, they're not giving up, they're still fighting, and there's a lot to be said about the manager instilling that in them. So it's been a while. They don't come a lot because it's not very often you see a team come back from 3-0 down, and you can't really fault them for that. Sure, you could say you shouldn't be going 3-0 down, but to turn it around the way they did, it's extremely impressive, and it's something that goes to show what I've been mentioning about the mentality of the team.
John, you said a win like that. Sorry, Dan, you said a win like that. Okay. Do you consider that 3-3 draw feeling like a win? And how bad of a result was a draw against West Ham? We're 5th in the league.
You're asking me, or are you asking Mike
you.
Feinberg's secret lover?
Don't ask me. I've not seen the game.
I asked you because you said a win like that. You kept on saying a win like that, and that Trev mentioned in the comments the way we came back and from 3-0, 3 goals down.
If I said a win like that, it was a Freudian slip, because to me, it does feel like a bit of a win. And it's not that it's like, okay, you go 3-0 down, you shouldn't be going 3-0 down. I agree with that, like 100%. But once you do go 3-0 down, which is going to happen, it's going to happen sometime. Clearly, it did happen. It's like the anthropic principle of football. Like, it happened because it did. The question is, can you come back from that? And I think that being able to come back from that was the win in my book. So it's interesting if I did say a win like that, because I didn't mean, obviously we drew, but it did feel like there was something positive coming out of that. So I take that as something good, especially, and very progressive from a team perspective that is trying to actually move and like a project that we have. So can't really complain too much.
So for someone who hasn't seen the game, I've seen a couple of the goals from highlights, but I didn't see the whole game. Ellis, why did we get to the position of being 3-0 down? Was it just like, against Wolves, it was because a bit of bad luck, and against Aston Villa it was more bad luck, or we were just absolutely rubbish, and that's why we're 3-0 down? If you had to try and put your finger on what went wrong or whose fault it was.
I wouldn't say it was bad luck. I think West Ham were deserving of their 3-0 lead. I'm trying to sort of, in my head, picture the 3 goals they scored. I think at the start of the game, I was a bit worried about when I saw the lineup, when I saw Aubameyang was going to be on the right. I thought with Declan Rice, who I think in your preview with Mr. Waffles, you mentioned he's got quite a few assists this season. So a lot of the assists come from the crosses from that side. And they've got Souček, who's big in the air. And from the kickoff, in the first 10 minutes, Souček was getting balls pumped to him and he was having chances left, right and centre. So I think it was only a matter of time. Eventually, a header went in. I think that was their third goal actually come from Antonio heading it down and then Souček getting a little nick off it and knocking it in. The free kick that Fergus mentioned, again, I don't think that's bad luck. Even the actual game, when you watch it, the cameras were still zooming in on, I think it was Saka complaining and the referee going up to him, and by then they'd already scored. So even the guys who were filming the game weren't really keeping up with the speed of the quick free kick that they played. So I think that was smart and that was clever from them. And the first goal that Jesse Lingard scored, that was just a good goal. As much as I hate him, it was a good goal. He took it down the volley, waited, and he put it just enough to get it round Chambers, who was trying to block it, and Leno just couldn't get fingertips. So I think they were definitely deserving of the game. I think we didn't play particularly well in the first half at all, and obviously we did in the second half. And Chambers for me was my man of the match. Again, Fergus mentioned why we played him there instead of Cedric. I think in Arteta's head, probably similar to the Burnley game, there's a lot of height there. They're going to be putting balls in there. I don't think he really planned for Chambers to put that many crosses in. I mean, he could have had a hat-trick assist with the crosses he was putting into the box. I've just not really seen that, and I think our fullbacks can learn a thing or two from the deliveries that he put in.
Can I take a minute to appreciate the use of the word profligacy in the chat? That's great. That's a word.
A little round of applause.
You don't see that word very. It's like recklessness.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, there you go. It's very rare I see a word. I mean, most words I can't say, but most words I do. You can figure out what they kind of mean. I had no idea. Fergus, you were talking about Calum Chambers and I think everyone, all types of media and everyone around has said that Calum Chambers was absolutely magnificent in that game. Apparently, I've only seen a few highlights of it. Do you think Bellerin should be worried? Because already I'd have Cedric start above Bellerin in every single game. And now Chambers is coming back and playing at right back when he's a centre-back, right back, central defensive midfield. It's all of those positions. If you were Bellerin, would you be worried?
If I was Bellerin, I'd be in touch with an estate agent in Barcelona and getting a new flat. Because honestly, listen, don't get me wrong. I like Bellerin as a guy. Not that I know him personally, but I like the guy. I think he's Arsenal through and through. He bleeds red and white. But I think he's just past it. He's not really recovered from his injury. I never rated his crossing, and Chambers put him to shame with his crossing. And his defensive duties are always also a little bit crap as well. So the only thing he had was his pace up along the wing, and I don't think he's ever really got it back. He's done a couple of good things this season every now and then, and he's broke through the middle and broke through the lines. But overall, he's still got a future somewhere, but I don't think it's at Arsenal Football Club, unfortunately.
Very true. Yes. Anyone got anything to say on that game before we move on to talking about something a little bit less depressing? I'll say a little bit less depressing. If it was looking at the West Ham fans and the Arsenal fans, I'd be more happy at coming back from 3-0 down than throwing away a 3-goal lead. And also someone in the chat put the Daniel Harry, put the last one he can remember is when we were 4-0 down to Reading, the Theo Walcott League Cup game, and come back to win 7-5 in extra time. But those kind of games of maybe once a decade for in top flight football. John?
Yeah, I think that spot on, and it's kind of one of those where you remember that game. You remember that game, and the players are going to remember that game, and the fans are going to remember that game. And it's one that now if you go down, you can come back, and that's what I was mentioning earlier. So it's important.
How it must feel to be a West Ham fan watching the team score 5 goals and still walk away with 1 point.
Yeah.
I'll be absolutely gutted to lose to a mid-table team or draw. I'm saying it now, getting the Freudian slip out with me if it feels like they've lost. But yeah. Speaking of Thomas Souček, he's just scored a hat-trick on international duty in 16 minutes.
There you go.
Who against?
I don't know. It's just popped up on Twitter.
Matt Roberts has put FA Cup final. Were we 3-0 down? We weren't, were we?
Was that against Hull? What's it going to...
Yeah. I think we were 2-0 down and Kieran Gibbs cleared off the line, didn't it?
No, we were 3-1 down, weren't we?
Kieran Gibbs, the Kieran Gibbs clearing was the one that get us in into the Champions League. Was that the clearing off the line?
It was so bad, I can't remember.
I can't remember either. Speaking of clearing off the line, Gabriel.
Yes.
Yeah,
we didn't talk about that, but that was sick.
Go on.
Anyway, yeah, no, that's it. That's all I had to say. He's amazing. He's such a good player.
He is too good for the likes of us. Well, again, saying too good for the likes of us, we've always, to have a decent team, you've got to have a decent spine. And our spine is very, very good. Leno, Gabriel, Partey, and Odegaard, who's people are saying in the chat that he's just gone, that he's come off at half-time with a knock for Norway. And then I suppose you would say on their either one of Lacazette or Aubameyang on their day, if either of them can be bothered. So we have got a decent spine, and I think people are very down on Arsenal at the moment, saying that it's not good enough. But if you look at the league table, we are 4th in the league table since, I think, the 29th of December. And then, as Carl was saying in our group, Ellis, he's going, yeah, but the league doesn't start in December. No, but that shows that form-wise, the entire league, other than Man City, is upside down and on its arse. And in that maelstrom of nonsense, we've managed to pull through and have a decent run, and we're up to 4th. And if we look at our run of games coming up towards the end of the season, we've got 9 games to go. Only 2 are hard against, well, I say 2, depends on how hard we make it for ourselves, Ellis. We've only got 2 hard games, Chelsea and Liverpool. So do you think Carl was being a little bit miserable? Because Chris was joining in with him, wasn't he?
Well, we all know Chris is very anti-Arteta. I think you've summed it up personally for me. I think it's very hard to judge Arteta on this season or his whole tenure at Arsenal, because he's joined in, pandemic hits, he's taken over from Emery, who that Emery team was by the time he left was a bit of a shambles. I think for me personally, the rot had started to set in Arsene Wenger's final season. They tried to bring in sort of a safety net kind of guy in Emery, and that didn't really work, and the rot just escalated. And I think Arteta's just come into a very hard job. Add to the fact that this is a guy who's never actually managed a club before, there's going to be teething problems. But the fact that he's managed to, for me, he's managed to get us playing occasionally and not necessarily a full 90 minutes, but at times he's got Arsenal playing really well and got results that I can see. And for me, I can physically see improvements there in the Arsenal team that weren't there under Unai Emery. But like I said, you just can't judge him. I think if this all settles down and there's a bit more stability in the league in general, or football, or the world in general, then yeah, we can probably judge him a bit harsher. If it's been a couple more seasons, we're still sort of lingering around sort of between 10. Like this season, I look at the table. One Carl mentioned that in our WhatsApp group. I thought, well, actually, like you say, it's so topsy-turvy. Like anyone could beat anyone. Everyone's on their ass a bit. Sometimes they're really good. Like Man United put together a good run, and everyone thought, "Oh, are they going to challenge City?" And then they've gone off the rails again, and it's just so difficult. We could fluctuate anywhere from 10th in the league up to potentially 6th if the run of game goes right and teams drop points and we manage to pick up a few wins. But who knows?
The problem is, Alice, is nobody is dropping points. All the likes of West Ham, Everton, and all the teams above us are all nicking points off each other. So we can't seem to make that ground up, no matter how good of a run we're getting. And it's frustrating. It must be frustrating for Arteta as well. It's definitely frustrating as an Arsenal fan.
But it just goes to show you the importance of starting a season off strong.
Exactly, yeah.
Because really that's where you make a lot of your ground, because there's going to be a dip, especially towards as players get more I don't want to say injured, but fatigued as the season goes on, and you're going to have to rely on rotating players more. There's going to be more chances of picking up and dropping points. So you want that safety net to start off. And if you look at teams that have been successful throughout a season and have finished strongly, it's been that first initial push, which under Wenger we used to do fairly well up until like December, and then it started like faltering. So it was that important push where we're getting the games where you would look on paper and say we need to get points, or at least win or at least get points from this game. And we used to do that. That's not something we've been able to do consistently since the end of the Wenger era moving forward. So if Arteta wants to really make a good impact on the table, he needs to start off strong.
Yeah, like Phil Macker puts in the chat, these days we can make any game difficult, which is true. So it kind of moves me on to the next thing I'd like to talk about is, does Arteta know his best team? Now, I was looking at this. I may have made a bigger deal of it than what it actually is. He plays Willian into form on the right wing. After an entire half a season of doing nothing, he finally starts scoring, getting assists and looking half decent. Then he drops him. And then he moves Pepe to the left wing after being on the right wing and doing bugger all most of the season. On the left wing, looking brilliant. And then he drops him. He plays Alba into form as a striker, and then either drops him and tells everybody why he's dropped him, which I didn't think was a good move, or moves him out to play on the right, which the entire time at Arsenal was either played as a left forward or as a striker. And then he gets Mari and Holding playing well, or Holding and Gabriel playing brilliantly, and then drops them. I've put, what the fuck is going on, Fergus? Have you got any idea?
With the centre backs, no, I haven't got a clue.
And I didn't even put in there last 3 games, 3 different right backs for the last 3 games.
Defensively, I really don't know what's going on. They keeps on rotating. For me, Gabriel and probably Luiz are the centre pairing I would stick with. Luiz does have a Rick in him, but he's a little bit more experienced. With regards to Willian's injured. He's in Dubai, conveniently injured that he has to go out to Dubai to fulfill some advertising contracts he's got out there. And with Aubameyang, his head's all over the place. You can see it. I know you didn't watch the game on Saturday, Dani, but you could see that guy. He honestly just wanted to crawl under a rock and be anywhere else but be on a football pitch with Arsenal Football Club. He's got stuff going on, and they need to sort his shit out or ship him off. That's the truth of him. But I think Arteta has the idea, allowing for a little bit of rotation, but I think he's got the structure of what he wants if he was to ideally choose his spine. As you said, Leno. I'm still a little bit unconvinced, which I said before. He's got Leno. He'd have Gabriel as the centre half. He'd have Partey and Xhaka are another to replace Xhaka, but Partey. And then he's got the likes of Odegaard or Smith Rowe. Smith Rowe is a permanent, and then whoever he puts up top. And up top is the issue. If we could score goals this season, defensively, I don't think let in as many goals. We've got more points away from home than we got in the whole of last year already. We're on 21 points versus 20 in the whole of last year. So there is signs of improvement. I think where we were let down in the start of the season was in the midfield, not creating opportunities for Aubameyang and Lacazette. And now Lacazette, when they are getting opportunities, aren't finishing them. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Does make me wonder, because you've probably been watching Arsenal. How many years have you been watching Arsenal? For me, taking notice of it, probably 1985 onwards. So what's that? That's 36 years. Jesus. Is yours roughly about that?
No, I'm a late bloomer. I moved over from Ireland in '88. I wasn't really into football and football violence and everything else. So I got into football, into Arsenal '93. So George Graham sort of time.
So my point was going to be that in my entire time as an Arsenal fan, I've never known this few injuries. Never as imagine what Wenger could have done if he'd have had an entire squad free of injuries for most of the time that he was manager. John,
if Santi stayed injury free that season back in 2015, we win the league.
Unreal.
I think we win the league in 2015 with Santi and Coquelin, or Ramsey if Ramsey could stay fit.
What do you think, John?
Imagine Ramsey staying fit.
Imagine Ramsey not breaking his leg at Stoke.
Eduardo, Diaby.
Eduardo, yeah.
I know this always makes me upset. I hate it's like the what have, coulda, shoulda, and touch wood that we can keep this injury thing because you're 100% right. We've been really, really lucky with these injuries, and hopefully it stays that way. So,
have you any idea why he keeps chopping and changing? Is it like here we go? Phil Macker has put in the chat. Is there a chance Arteta is playing with the team week by week till he finally gets the players he wants? I don't think it's that.
Maybe, I mean, there's probably an element of rotation there. You have to imagine that he's being instructed by the physio staff about, keep what players are ready and how long to play certain ones. It's not just him picking people based off of tactically, which there's an element of that, but it's also fitness. So we're looking at our fitness record. It could very well be that part of it is the rotation of the players. And we saw Xhaka, for example, go out for the first time in 16 consecutive games. He played every minute the last 16 games. So there's players out there that are playing a lot of football. Perhaps it's part of the rotation. And then if it is part of the rotation, then maybe it's not about just finding your best team. It's about just making sure everyone's fit to play throughout the rest of the season, knowing we have significant rounds in a knockout competition for our European future, basically.
Yeah. Ellis, is there any merit to the thought that maybe he is trying mixing and matching until he gets the right combination? Or would you like the other stat that I had is from Brighton on the 29th of December, we had a run of 5 clean sheets out of 6 league games. I think we conceded one against maybe have been Southampton. I can't remember now. That was I got that wrong the first time I did it, and then I deleted the second bit. And the third bit I'm keeping. Was that a fluke? And what can we do to get that back? As it's now 12 games, League and Cup, without a clean sheet. But he's had the same players, and all the same players are fit. And is it down to Arteta mixing and matching? Like sometimes Wenger would make substitutions or drop players for no apparent reason. And we all know that Pep at Man City will all of a sudden go, I brought out a new formation. We're going to play a 7-3-5 and they're all going to play on the left-hand side and have no one in goal. And do you think sometimes Arteta looks at what he's doing and going, I've got a cunning plan?
To be fair, you made quite a good point at the end of your little question.
I've never made a good point in my life.
But most of Arteta's coaching career, or pretty much all of it until he moved to us, was been under Pep Guardiola, working as part of Pep Guardiola's team. And if any of you or anyone listening plays fantasy football, if you ever pick anyone from Man City, you'll know how frustrating it is that Pep will rotate his team and he'll drop players and they'll miss games. And I think a part of that has probably influenced Arteta. I mean, how could it not influence Arteta? He's worked with him so closely. There's going to be influences there from Pep. Potentially there'll be influence there from when Arteta was at Arsenal under Arsene. I also think there's a bit of merit to the fact that he just generally doesn't know who his best centre-back partnership is, who his best right winger is, who his best left winger is. I think he is, like you said, I think there is some merit to it. He is just trying to chop and change and find a bit of form. But then also, again, I think you could argue with what John said. Maybe that is part of it, the rotation. It's a pandemic. There's a lot of games in a shorter period of time. They're going to have to rotate. But the thing is, you can't please everyone. In one of my other WhatsApp chats, people have been bemoaning the fact that Tierney's playing a lot of games and he's going to get injured and then we'll miss him and then who's going to play there? Potentially Cedric. Whatever. There was a period when John's mentioned Xhaka played literally every single game until recently. Also, Saka has played a lot of minutes for Arsenal as well. There are certain players that he can't rotate, and I think that's purely the fact that the substitutes or the squad players that are going to take over for them aren't good enough to perform the way those starters can. And I think he's got a selection of players that he can rotate. When you look at Willian, Pepe, some of the people that played on right and left, you can rotate them. There's not a massive drop-off in quality of performance. If you take Aubameyang out for Lacazette, again, they've both been a bit hit and miss this season, but I wouldn't say one's particularly better than the other at the moment. You saw with the disciplinary reasons that he took Aubameyang out and Lacazette started, and we still managed to score goals. I think he's just rotating the plays that he knows he can, and the ones that he can't, he just can't, because he knows there'll be a drop-off, or is scared that if he does rotate, then the team's not going to play the way he wants us to play.
Fergus, any ideas on any of that lot? Can you make sense of anything? Because you look like a man who looks at things deeply, and I've heard you speak, and you do know what you're on about, unlike some of us. Me.
I beg to differ, but I would say that one of the main reasons that we haven't failed to keep a clean sheet in the last 12 games is one Dani Ceballos. He cost us 3 goals in 2 games. And well, the Ceballos goal, the third goal, could ultimately be blamed on Xhaka, but it's just some of the tactics of playing the ball and making schoolboy errors of playing the ball across the box in front of your keeper. I never played football to any sort of level whatsoever, but even I know that you don't play the ball across the front of your goal, because it just takes a poacher, just a toe poke it in, and you're done. I think there's also the effect that Ellis mentioned as well about pandemic and fans. The lack of fans, I think, is now actually taking an effect on all the teams in the leagues. I think initially, the first time when we came back after the first lockdown, I think it was a bit of euphoria of being able to play a bit of football. It was a bit weird, but we've done a whole season of this, and I think it's affecting us watching it on TV, because you can't be asked to watch half the games because they're just so awful and hard to watch. The North London Derby, I really struggled to watch it with fake noise. It just felt soulless to watch, and it's a game that I love going to. I never remember it. I'm drunk as a skunk at every game, but I watch it the following day if we win. But I think the fans have made a difference, and I don't know, the squad selection. Elneny has had good games and he's had awful games. When you have that Elneny, Ceballos, Xhaka trio in the midfield, I just think it just makes us very, and we've done it against Olympiacos, it makes us very, very slow, very, very defensive, and then it shows our defensive frailties because we make stupid mistakes. Yeah,
there is. Like if we had to pick 3 players at the moment that you're going to go, they've got a ricket in them. You got Ceballos, Luiz, and Xhaka. Anyone think of any other players or disagree with that?
Other players that have a mistake in them?
Regular mistakes. Who?
Leno.
Wow. Is that a ricket in him, or is that he's left as the last man because people in front of him mess up?
I agree with Ellis here. I think there's been a couple, especially recently, I get we're playing from the back, but there are certain tactics to playing to the back. You don't have to do it, first of all, every single time, and you don't have to do it to players that are under immense pressure all the time. There's sometimes to play from the back, there's sometimes not to. And again, it's a team that's still learning the kind of nuances of that. But there have been times when I think Leno has made mistakes that have led directly to goals, including
me over with a feather. When you were on our podcast, you had a German hat on, and you were screaming how good Leno was. He's the best keeper, this, that, and the other.
He was goose stepping under the table.
Yeah, he was doing a lot, honestly. And he never makes a mistake whatsoever. And now,
excuse me, I never said he never makes a mistake. First of all, so if you're gonna try to throw me under the bus, you can at least be accurate. That's the first thing. The second thing,
taking you under the bus.
Second thing, I agree that I think that at the time when you're looking at this, I always said that pass, for example, to Xhaka was a bad one, and I know that Leno's been one of our best players throughout this bad seasons that we've had. But I'm not, even though I like a player, it doesn't mean I'm not going to call it like I see it. And if he's making a mistake, I'm not going to just not address it. And I think there's been times this season where, as good as Leno can be in games, he's made unnecessary movements and passes that have led to players that don't do great under pressure be put under immense pressure, which is
yeah.
So I'm not saying they're his fault, but he's been involved in them, and it's not like I'm not trying to nitpick here because I think that he's an excellent keeper and he's one of the best that we've had in a very long time. But there's room for improvement there, and it might just be a product of us not knowing, still working out the kinks of how to play out from the back. But it's something that at least needs to be highlighted because, I agree with this comment right here, by the way. He's been a net positive and it's not close. And I'm not saying he hasn't been a net positive, but if we're talking about players that have made mistakes frequently recently, he's made a couple of them. And I think that you at least need to highlight it, at least point it out. It would be disingenuous to look at players making mistakes and not see how Leno has also contributed in some way. Considering he's been involved in 3 goals.
He's made some fantastic saves. He's a great shot stopper.
Agreed.
Occasionally, he cocks up his distribution.
Okay, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about occasional mistakes, and he's making them.
But my issue, which he has improved on, my issue when we talked about it before, was he continuously parried the ball out of the penalty spot, and we conceded goals subsequently from that. Yeah. He has improved his game, and he has got better, but I'm still not 100% convinced.
I think if we all had to get the entire Arsenal squad and line them up left to right, with the first one being the player that you want to get rid of the most and work your way through the squad, I don't think Leno would be in the first 11 players I'd want to get out of the club. And would anyone have him in their top 3 or 4?
No.
I don't know about that, but no. I think I'm along feeling the same way as sort of John. I'm not saying Leno's a bad player.
Of course not.
I'm just saying that if you're going to highlight people who've got a ricket in them, I'd probably even argue the second goal, the quick free kick that West Ham score, I think that's the second goal. Yep. He gets beat at his near post. I think Leno should probably do better there. And again, I agree with the distribution issue. He's played a part in that. Whether that's just not a strength of his game or whether it's the fact that you just put better midfielders in there that can receive the ball under pressure and you cut that out completely, I don't know. But I'm just saying he's got a ricket in him, but I don't think he's not someone that I want to get out. I think he's a good keeper. He's like both the guys have said, he does make good saves, does make good decisions at times, but I'm just pointing out he does have a ricket in him.
Yeah, and so everyone doesn't try to jump on your throat because you're criticizing a player that for some reason, a lot of people say you can't criticize. You absolutely can't. Any player on this team is open to criticism when it's warranted. And I think that, the net positives outweigh the negatives for Leno. But like you pointed out, and like I mentioned earlier, there are certain aspects of his game that can need improvement. And that might not be because the player himself. Like I said, it might just very well be it's just some little things that need to be worked out about how we're comfortable with the system. Like he made comments when he did make that mistake and pass under pressure, and then we lost the ball and conceded a goal. And he said, look, we always play from the back. This will happen. And that might very well be true. But I think there are certain instances where you learned where to play from the back when pressure is unnecessary, when pressure is good. And like you said, distribution wise. So
is that instruction coming from Arteta though?
It could be. If it's coming from Arteta to always play from the back, then you can't really fault him. He's just doing what he's told. But we don't know that. So I don't think we should give anyone a benefit of the doubt when there's no evidence of it whatsoever. It may very well be that he said the opposite. Leno's not going to say that. Arteta's not going to say that. But what we'll see is maybe hopefully those kind of occurrences happening less and less, and that'll show a progression. And it might very well be that the players that we have in those positions, like Xhaka playing in a defensive position, trying to be technical in a tight area, not his forte. Maybe don't pass to him and under pressure in that regard. Yeah, maybe we should have better players. Fine, but we're going down this rabbit hole now when you start having that conversation versus we could just say, look, he makes mistakes from time to time. Why we can just accept that.
I think that is the issue from playing out from the back anyway, sort of trying to take it more away from everyone hates Leno, he can't play out from the back, more from a sort of team thing. One, you are a team that are trying to start to play out from the back as a new thing. Teams pick up on that, they put pressure on that. But if you get good enough at doing it, then teams back off a bit because they know you can withstand that pressure because you're good at playing out from the back. At the moment, teams look at Arsenal and think, oh, look at that mistake that Leno made there. Look at the mistake that Xhaka made there. Look at the mistake that Ceballos made there. Look at the mistake that Luiz has made there playing out from the back. They're all susceptible to it. So teams are going to put high pressure on us because they know that's how they could potentially nick a goal from us. But if we get better at that, if we continue, if that is the message, like you say, from Arteta to always play out from the back and we get to a point where we can do it I'm not saying we're going to be able to do it like Man City, but so we can get to a point where we can do it well, similar to how Man City do, then you watch games like them and people don't put as much pressure on them because they know they'll wriggle a way out, and if they beat that press, then they're on their way. But I think that's just teething problems for me. And again, like John said, I don't want to just pick on any particular player, Leno, Xhaka, Ceballos, either of them. I just think that is a natural problem that we're going to have. And until we improve those players in those positions, then those are probably the issues we will have.
Yeah, and then you mentioned...
Sorry, I think it's also unfortunate for a keeper. If Xhaka makes an error in the middle of the park, it can be cleaned up by somebody else. If a keeper makes an error, invariably,
100%.
Yeah. So I'm not hanging the guy out to dry. I'm just similar to you guys that he has got some frailties.
Yeah. And looking, when you mentioned Man City, and you look at Ederson, who's maybe the best passing keeper in top 3 in world football. He is an absolute. He's one of the best. He's one of the best. It's unreal. His passing range from where he is really, really special, and it allows City to do a lot of the things that they do to get the ball out to attacking players. Leno does not have that, but he's still. And someone mentioned he has average feet. I think that's a little unfair. I think he's decent with his feet. It's not his forte though. Yeah, it's not his forte, and. It's going to be something surely Arteta is going to be working on with them to get the ball out, especially to try to, if we're going to play from the back, you could still do it in a way that you need another option, right? So if you're not playing from the back, you can't just hoof it into the midfield and then hope everything works out. Sometimes you need an outlet to your wing players, and that's something that City does extremely well. And knowing that that's what they did, as Ellis mentioned earlier, we all know Arteta came from that Pep school. I'm sure he's going to want to try to emulate that if he can. We'll see.
Just spare a thought for Mike McDonald. I asked him to come on tonight, but he's busy because it's I don't know. He was coaching today, and we spent the last 5 minutes talking of goalkeepers. So if you're listening to this, Mike, I'm very sorry. I should have saved it for when we can get you on. But the only thing I'd say is playing out from the back broke one of the best goalkeepers in Premier League history, Petr Cech, killed him. He retired after it because you can't do it. It's a little bit, Ellis, like if we decided ABW was going to do a podcast one day where we're just doing singing. None of us can sing, so we're not doing a singing podcast. No one playing for Arsenal can play out from the back happily. It doesn't work. So either change the players or stop doing it. Am I wrong? I'm usually wrong. The silence says they either don't want to disagree with me or they agree. Anyone want to make any final points on that before we move on a little bit?
We see that horse dead.
For the people at home, they're shaking their head, which means because they're all on mute because they're all being very polite. Imagine if it was Chris on here or Josh, he'd have told me. He'd be shouting at me by now. So I've done that one. This one, okay. Trying a little bit of positivity for the pod. Start with you, Ellis. Our next 5 games: Liverpool at home, Slavia home, Sheffield United away, Slavia away, Fulham at home. Surely we should win 4 of those 5 games. And if like someone made a point, we always go on. I think this is the thing on podcasts. We always go in our WhatsApp group. Well, we did because there's lots of good stuff talking there. They were saying that someone mentioned that Liverpool can only they know they're not going to retain the league. They're out of the FA Cup. They're out of the League Cup. All they've got is the Champions League, and maybe they'll concentrate on that. And as we're at home and it's an 8 o'clock kickoff, not a midday kickoff. Are you hopeful for that? And how do you think with that run of next 5 games is going to go for us?
Firstly, I don't know what it is about the way you say Slavia, but it just sounds wrong to me when you say it. I don't know why. It just doesn't register with me that you're talking about a football team.
I can't even say Tierney properly. Because of my mum, I just make it for years, Fergus. I always thought they were called scissors.
They are.
Yeah.
They're called scissors.
No,
I call scissors.
No, everyone says scissors. No one says
scissors.
Oh no, I say scissors.
Don't say scissors. No,
you can't even get it right.
The Irish word for scissors is scissors, apparently, and so my mum just says scissors all the time. And so for 42 years, I've said scissors.
The Irish word for movie is film.
My mum says film, and she says washing machine.
Yeah. Washing machine, yeah, and go through new messages.
Washing machine is how you say it, and scissors is how you say it. What's going on here?
No, I say scissors.
I know. Now you say scissors.
That's because I'm finally getting it right. In fact, when I went back to Ireland a couple of years ago, Sean thought it's hilarious how everything in the house is referred to as a yolk. Can you get the yolk out of the yolk?
Yeah.
What the fuck are you talking about? I think it's hilarious. Anyway, enough about my family. Ellis,
everybody's ye. Everybody's
it is
ye lot.
So Ellis, before you were talking about my inability to say Slavia.
As for the Liverpool game, I'm not massively hopeful. I'm a bit worried. I don't know why. I know they're pretty shit, but obviously they're not as shit in the table as we are. What the fuck is James going on about?
What?
Food, puddings. Forget this thing an idea. Oh my god! Now it's in my head.
He wants to do a podcast. Oh, because James and Jock are now doing stuff with ABW, which is good. And hopefully Daniel will and Green Banton will. And I said, do you want to just do your own one sometime? He went, yeah, we'll do one on him. It'll be James and Jock nude talking about puddings and hamwitches. I've interrupted you twice now, Ellis. Look, I'm going to do this.
Stokes interrupted me with that comment. Well, actually, no, it was you because you put the comment on. So yeah, I'll blame you, not Stokes. Anyway, Liverpool, not too confident. Think that could potentially be a bad one. I don't know. Like, they have been pretty bad. They've got a lot of injuries. They're obviously not Liverpool that won the title last season. But then, like we saw against West Ham, we can play pretty fucking bad too. So it might just be a case of who plays the least bad and who wins that. But we'll see. Again, like you say, they've got other things to focus on now, but so have we, because we're not really going to go anywhere in the league. As for Slavia, even now when I say it, it just sounds wrong. As for the Prague team, like he says, I don't put it on live, or he's just, what the fuck is this? Fuck me. Can you stop putting Stokes' comments up, please? It's really distracting. Anyway, back to Slavia Prague. They've knocked out Rangers. They've knocked out Leicester. I think we'll get past them. My worry is probably the fact that we could meet an Unai Emery managed Spanish team in the Europa League, which will probably mean we'll get knocked out by them and we won't make a final against United. But yeah, I think we should at least. I think Slavia Prague will probably be a similar Olympiacos sort of story. We'll do well in one leg and not so well in the other leg, but hopefully be enough to get us through. And like I said, the Liverpool game could go either way.
I'm muting myself all the way through that. Jonas Stecknenberg says, well, if you're going to be pedantic, how about you say Washek Szczesny? So I can say that because we had Steve on here, and Steve used to say it every week. And I think you can say Szczesny. I think another way you can say it, but yeah, anything Polish, we're on that. It took 6-7 years of him shouting at it to say it properly. John, what's your thoughts on these upcoming 5 games? Does it fill you with hope or dread, or should we get the clown car out?
I mean, Ellis kind of made the point earlier. It's like we could sometimes be really good. We could sometimes be really shit. So it's kind of that scenario, right? It's unclear. And I think that the team's going to be up for it. But I said that about the West Ham game, and they didn't start out up for it. But I posted it right around in the second half, I think, of that game. I said, why can't we start with that intensity from the get-go? Like, pretend like you're 3-0 down going into a game, and that's the mentality you have playing. That's what we need to do against a side like Liverpool, because if we're just kind of pedestrian, even though they're not doing that great, they have talent that could tear a team apart. And they're looking for, I bet they're salivating at the chance of wiping the floor with us, because they've been down. So, man, his comments are unreal. These are great. It does sound vigorously sensual. Anyway, I think the Liverpool match is definitely one that we need to have the right mentality going right off the bat. And then there are winnable matches in the next one. And then obviously Europe is do or die for us. It's absolutely fundamental that we really, really push as hard as we can to get back into the Champions League. It's been our goal since Wenger left, and even right before then. It's always been our goal. We're a team that wants to be and should be in the Champions League given our stature, and not out of Europe and mid-table. So yeah, there's definitely some important ones coming up. There's a lot of stress. I'm not going to enjoy watching the next run of games, regardless of how I think we can do or how poorly I think we can do. It's just going to be if we're like 2 goals up, I'll feel a little bit better against Liverpool, but I'm not super confident about it.
Fergus, what's your thoughts on the upcoming 5 games? Are you full of confidence? Or you with the impending doom starting to get to you?
I'm never full of confidence when it comes to Arsenal these days. The only thing that does give me some hope, I think it's 5 out of 7 games that we've won against the top 6 sides, and we've drawn one, which is the West Ham game. Liverpool are in poor form, so I'd like to think that we could at least get a draw. The fact that it's at our place, does it really matter? I don't know. I'd like to see a draw there. I think with the 2 Prague games, I think we'll get a win on one and we'll lose the other. Hopefully not by too many, and we scrape through into the next round and see who we get in the next round of the Cup. As John said, the Europa League is fundamentally everything we need to concentrate on. Because for the point I said earlier, everybody's taking points off everybody in the league. I don't think we can get that much further up the league to qualify us for Champions League automatically. I think is totally out the window. Europa League automatically, I think, is very, very dodgy. And I definitely do not want to be in the European Conference League playing football at 3:30 on a Thursday afternoon. The away days will be brilliant, but the home games, oh.
Dear, yeah, it's not going to be good. How about I've just had a look. I thought, games coming up after the Arsenal-Liverpool game. We play on the 3rd, and then on the 6th, Liverpool are away to Real Madrid, but we're not playing our next game at home until the 8th. Do you think that will have any bearing on the game, Fergus?
Well, the bearing on Liverpool's selection, I would have thought, especially if they've got so many injury problems, and they're having an Arsenal season in the sense of injury problems. So they'll have to rotate heavily, and hopefully that will work in our advantage. But as it's come up in the comments, it really just depends on which Arsenal turns up. You cannot bloody call it these days.
Go back and listen to the last 20 minutes that we've talked about. And then go from there. That none of us know what he's going to do. Anyone else want to make any points on that run? You're all sitting there very quietly. No, John's kind of shook his head. Ellis has shook his head.
No.
Okay. Ellis has shouted no. Then the run-in after that is a little bit easier. It's not something we should really cover now. But we've got Liverpool at home, and then we've got away to Sheffield United, home to which we will win, home to Fulham we'll win, home to Everton. I can see us winning that. Away to Newcastle, that's a win. Home to West Brom, that's a win. Away at Chelsea is going to be hard. Away to Crystal Palace, flashbacks to this time last season. Was it the season before that? I've blocked it. Last game of the season at home to Brighton. I mean, you've got to look at that and think, yeah, top 6. We're going to win most of those games, aren't we? Or am I losing the plot? Or am I just, have I been on the baby sham?
The Brighton and the Palace games could be different because Palace, if all goes well, could have fans in for that game. They could have 4,000 fans in there, so they're going to up the game even more for it. We could have 10,000 fans in for the Brighton game. So it's going to be a party last game of the season. You would like to think if there's anything on the table that we're going for it. So I do think those last 2 games are hard to call. The Chelsea game, as you said, is difficult to call. Everton, they're no mugs. The fact that it's at our place, again, doesn't really matter. I think we could probably get a result against Everton. But yeah, in theory, it's an easy run-in. Somebody put in the comments earlier on, remember the last time we had an easy run-in under Emery? Yeah. And then we were in the Europa League final. And we fucked it all up.
I thought you were going to say something then, John.
No, I was just thinking back.
What did you say, Ellis?
So that's not taking into account how up and down this season as a whole, not just Arsenal, with everyone in the league. Like, I think it'd be very naive to say those are all easy winnable games when you're talking about Arsenal. Like, who knows what sort of Arsenal's going to turn up.
John is nodding vigorously.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And it's how do you, and that's kind of what I was getting at. Like, how do you predict what this team is going to do? It could come out and, be amazing, but like this season has felt like 2 seasons pushed into one. And part of it was because there was a big break in it, obviously, but like, even within the times that there were no break, it was extremely volatile in terms of everything going on. And then all of a sudden, like Ozil leaves and all these, and Mustafi leaves. And now we're trying, and all of a sudden Willian is playing every game, but he sucks. And now he's good again. And then Pepe's great, but he stops playing. And then it's like, there's so much crap going on. It's very, very difficult to kind of get a good grasp of how I feel about the season. And that transposes to how I think we're going to do match to match. It's almost like, I don't know. Let's just see what happens. I have no idea anymore. It's like games by Sybil or something. It's like unreal.
Just flip a
You've
coin.
got relegation battles in there as well. You got Fulham, Newcastle, and Everton all fighting for relegation as well, which will make it more difficult. You would have thought.
Yeah, and somehow West Ham are good, and then Spurs were top of the league, and now they're mid-table with us, and Liverpool.
They won the league in November. What are you on about?
Yeah, and then now Liverpool is like mid-table club now. Like it's just very crazy season. It's a very crazy season. Hard to predict anything.
We will look back at this last 2 years in years to come and go, wow, the league has never been more topsy-turvy than that. And so many teams have had a chance to grab it. And Man City, I think I added up all the league games in a row that Aguero hasn't scored for Man City. And it was something like 48 games or 38 or 48 league games that Man City have played that Aguero didn't score in until his penalty last week. And Man City fans aren't complaining.
That's crazy.
Pep just adapts it all. I mean, a lot of it is out injured, and the rest of the time recently he's just been a substitute. But I think one thing we can take
whoever they want, whenever they want, and get multiple people in multiple positions. I think they're the only team like that who are going to sit here probably rubbing their hands together, going, "All the money these teams can't make, and we can just buy whatever the fuck we want. It's lovely. We'll win the league for the next 5 seasons." While everyone
Holland, we need a striker. Let's do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Simon's a bit hopeful. He says, let's smash Liverpool 2-0 and lose to Sheffield United 5-4.
That'd be a great game, to be fair, 5-4.
Dear. If we got enough time at the end, someone, I think it might have been, it was Divyun said, maybe talk about FFP because there was an announcement today, and all I knew from this is listening to Tom's pod. So go and listen to the Gooner Talk. Go and find Tom's one on FFP. He covers it perfectly, and then he takes questions at the end because Tom is very, very good. So we kind of covered that. All right, let's move on from happiness and delirium of me thinking we're going to win every game for the rest of the season and finish top 4 to dealing with Slavia Prague, the dirty shit bags. I've put, talking of Slavia, we'll start with Ellis on this. Should we be concerned for the safety of our players as the away leg is due to kick off at 9 p.m. at their stadium unless it's going to be moved? So it's going to be dark. Their fans are good. Some of their fans are mental. I mean, we all saw after the was it Glenn Kamara? The one that was playing for Rangers?
Yes.
Yeah, Glenn Kamara. And after the game, there was pictures of all the ultras out the front, and they had a banner that they'd made themselves out the stadium. It's horrible. And you do not want to be walking around or anywhere near the stadium at night when those Muppets are out. Now, I've got some friends from Eastern Europe, all lovely, lovely people. And it's not them. It's just that tiny minority, which are the ultras. And many countries have ultras, and you don't mess with the ultras because, I mean, sometime in Italy, the ultras will make the clubs do what the clubs want. I mean, one time in Italy, I remember that the ultras were there during training, and they made the players take off all the kits, give us the shirts back, or something like that. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. So Ellis, the notes I've made is: should they be banned, fined, or both? Who should replace them if they are kicked out, or should we get a bye? Then a couple of facts, like they're 16 points clear at the top of their league. They haven't lost a game all season, and much like a few other teams that are top of their leagues, they've got nothing else to concentrate other than the Europa League. So what should happen to them? Because they can't get away with. I bet you. I've asked you the question, and I'm going to talk. I bet you they'll get a fine less than Bentner got during the World Cup for showing his pants.
Probably, because that is the mad world that we live in. That it's all right to do that, but it's not all right to show a betting sponsor on your knickers. For me personally, I'd love to see them be fined and banned, both of it. Fucking throw the book at them, kick them out, like make a show of it and say, look, this is not acceptable. Doesn't matter where you're from, what culture you are, whether you've got hooligans that are doing it and the rest of your fans are all lovely and fine and won't say anything like that. The fact is, unless you control the minority being arseholes, then you get fined, you get kicked out. Control them or fuck off. And we don't stand for that. But that's probably not going to be the case. And if they were kicked out on the course, I'd say have a bye. Because why the fuck we want to play on else? It'd be lovely. Just let us go straight on to the semis would be nice.
But what do you think they will do?
I think a saving grace is the fact that our fans can't travel. So at least our fans won't get getting their head kicked in by the ultras. It's not nice for the boys in our team, and obviously we've got a lot of black players, so hopefully they're not subjected to any abuse. And I don't know, it's just so difficult. It's not really one for me to say or talk about because it's not really my place, but you'd like to think that they'd have the strength to just walk off with people who do that, but it's difficult. I don't really want to open that can of worms. It's not for me to say. It's not my place. But yeah, I think they'd probably just get a little fine and that'll be it. No in UEFA.
Fergus?
I think it was disgraceful what happened up there in Rangers. It will go to the corrupt organisation that is UEFA. They will issue a small fine to Slavia Prague, probably less than Bentner's fine, as you said. Personally, myself, I think the player, I can't remember his name himself, the player should be the one who's addressed first and foremost. The club should also be fined for not controlling their player, but the player needs to be kicked out of the game for 6-9 months, Cantona-esque. And make an example of him so that other players realize that they can't do it. The problem that you've got with this particular player is he was extremely clever, that nobody would be ever able to prove what he said. He covered his mouth totally from every angle, from every camera, and straight down the guy's ear. He said what he said. And the only person who's going to know what he said is Kamara, and it's his word against the other guy. So there's no way UEFA can prove it. Should UEFA grow some balls and go, hang on a second, by the law of averages, looking at the way there was a fight in the tunnel afterwards, the way that everything went down, I don't think somebody's going to go to that because they went, you're a lovely little bunny rabbit or something in his ear hole. He obviously said something racist, something abhorrent to the guy that he reacted like he did. Steven Gerrard, not really a great fan of an ex-Liverpool guy, but he's doing a good job there, and he's also come out and supported Kamara. Act on the player first, also then do some punitive action against the team themselves. Should they get kicked out of it? I don't think they'll get kicked out of it in reality. If they did, which I think would be it'd be the right thing to a certain degree, but also probably a bit of a joke and would probably reflect on us in a strange way badly, because people would go, oh, you just got through on a bye. Who should drop back in? Well, Rangers probably should be the one who dropped back in. I know there's some people talking about Tottenham could drop back in because of coefficient and stuff. I don't know the whole details about that, but if anybody's going to drop back in, Rangers, and I'm a Celtic man.
Yeah, I'd like to play Rangers just so we can smash them because I hate them. John, you look like you've got something important to say.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, everything that they said was spot on. The only thing I want to add on is that as disgusting as what those fans did afterwards, they had an Instagram post that was disgusting. I'm not going to repeat what they put on there. It was a banner. And then they got it taken down. So their response was to say, hey, Instagram posted took down our post. Here's a link that you could see it uncensored on our website. So they doubled down on the disgusting stuff that they posted. And if you've ever been on their, because I went on their fan website, and it's basically them wearing like boxing wraps and like having hooligan battles with other, ultra thing. It's disgusting, and it's not. Look, I'm not. You know what? No, I'm not going to be casting judgment on people because like everyone has their own thing. I don't know what it's like to live where they do or anything, but I could say that there's certain things that are, in my opinion, universally despicable, and what they put on that banner is despicable, and that's all I have to say about it. And then to double down on it the way they did is a joke.
I don't think they're football fans, to be honest. I just think they use that as an excuse for what they want to do. I just think they're a bunch of dickheads, essentially, and they just try and use the banner of that football club to allow them to be dickheads.
Yeah, I would, that would explain their actions because it doesn't have anything to do with the football.
I expect they are football fans. I expect they're fanatical football fans. One of the clubs I loosely follow is Dynamo Dresden in the Bundesliga third, because my daughter lives over there and her partner is a mad Dynamo fan, and they've got ultras and everything else. And I've been in their K block, and there was nothing. Okay, they were speaking German. I don't speak German, but there was nothing untoward and stuff like that. You're always going to get dickheads somewhere, and I'm not making any excuses for these Slavia Prague guys by no means or shape, and what they've done is wrong. You're always going to get dickheads someplace, and you get people who go to Arsenal who aren't football aficionados. They like football. They like the atmosphere. I go for the social. I go for singing in the crowds. I love all of that. I don't necessarily know everything about the technicalities of football on the pitch. I just like the whole Arsenal family sort of thing. And I think you do get people of that, and they go to the extreme with the ultras, and they don't necessarily kick the shit out of each other in park every week and that sort of stuff. So I don't know.
I think Ellis is more talking about those Prague players, though, because in line with that, when I did go on that website, they didn't have any pictures of them at games or like enjoying themselves. It was all them fighting, like literally fist fighting with other hooligan like groups. So it was almost as if it was like, yeah, they might have like some tangential relation to football, but it's clear they even sold merchandise about like, their hooligan. It was bizarre. The whole thing is bizarre. And I'm kind of with Ellis on this, at least in this particular group. It seemed like football was secondary.
Yeah, sadly, it does remind me that thing you were saying where they all get the boxing tape on, and I've seen that they do it in the housing estates where there's massive big flats, and they all agree to meet at a certain time. If anyone's seen Green Street Hooligans and these kind of things, they are. From what I've seen, those things they're really bad, and there's maybe 40 or 50 from each side, and they all track suited up and Diodora as far as the eye can see. And they all meet up and smash the shit out of each other. But that is such a tiny minority of any of the supporters. But it reminds me of 80s football. I mean, I've known some people in my time that were quite into the football violence in the 80s. They're all grown men now; none of them do it. But it used to be after the game, you'd meet up in a certain place. Only the people that wanted to get involved in the fighting would go, and they wouldn't involve members of the public, and they'd go and do all of that sort of stuff. That's partly from what people have told me, and partly what I've seen in the film. So 50% of what I've just said is right. But there is that element to most clubs, just because it's mostly gone from the UK. But there again, the way that the UK does stuff, we do tend to behave ourselves, and we are a little bit better behaved at grounds now because we're so notorious for being shitty. In fact, in my entire just under 400 games going to football, I've seen violence twice. Both times it was Spurs away. And one of them ran after my dad's car because my dad was silly enough to have the scarf hanging out the back window as we beat Spurs 2-1. And then they were running after the back of the car, banging on the back of the Montego. Oh, they've been so scared because they wanted to kill us. But that was 1987. So very rarely have I seen it since then.
That was an issue with Russia, wasn't it? And my boss was in Marseille when the Russians came in the Euros a couple of years beforehand, and they specifically targeted the English football fans because it's like a trophy if you can get the English flag or the Dutch flag, because they were so renowned for hooligans. Soccer violence is easier for me to say. In the 80s, so and they're just stuck in Miami Vice time, aren't they? The Russians and some of the Eastern European in some of the way they do things. So yeah, let's walk away from stereotypes before I get myself into more trouble.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff the Dutch got up to is absolute. I mean, they were doing that into the late 90s. Only going from the news reports and the old YouTube videos I've seen of stuff like that. But yeah, it is. It's not something we tend to see too much of it nowadays. Anyone else want to say anything else on that before I go and ask some of the questions that these lovely people? Oh, we're going to do a little bit on FFP. So anything else to say on that last thing? No, they're all looking silent. Yeah, today it has been announced by FIFA, UEFA. They've gone, the FFP that everybody ignored, and Man City threatened to take us to court and would bankrupt us if we decided to argue with them. We're not doing FFP anymore. Not that anyone's taken any notice. Does anyone know any more details about it than that? Because I've forgotten what Tom said.
Just what Tom said. That's all I know about it.
Well, tell him what Tom said.
He was mentioning how it could possibly benefit it's going to benefit the big teams, because it's not. It goes from it goes to spending without. It's a little bit more broad now what they're able to spend on. Before it was this kind of beneficial towards the self-sustaining model, right? Because you could spend what you bring in. That's what are the defining characteristics. Versus now, it's just kind of spend reasonably, which is kind of amorphous. And he used a better word. He explained it way better than I could. So go obviously watch him explain it. But that's what my takeaway from it was, that it broadened what the clubs are able to spend, and it benefits not teams that are looking to self-sustain, but teams that are bigger and have more money to begin with.
I think they are going to try and incorporate some kind of salary cap. Now, for me, that would be the first way to go. I know back in the days they brought in a salary cap back in the 1960s, and I think Jimmy Hill was head of the PFA, and they were finding other ways, like, you're on £5 a week and you get a free Mark 1 Cortina, or we buy that house that you've got that you live in at £700 to buy a house, you get the free house. But now we'll be seeing that we've seen already that allegedly how Man City managed to get all those massive sponsorship deals. You got some Qatari kebab shop as sponsoring their sleeve for £20 million a season, and then you find out that a kebab shop is owned by the cousin of the bloke who runs the country, and then they won't do anything about it. And a salary cap similar to the way they do it in MLS, well, that worked for a while, didn't it, John? And then they brought in the Beckham rule, and then they brought in the designated players, where you could most players in MLS would be on 30 grand a year, and then you'd have a couple of designated that would be on £500,000 a week, or something massive like that.
And it's not just MLS. Pretty much all American sports have salary caps for this exact reason. Baseball, basketball, hockey, all of those sports have a salary cap to prevent teams from just going out and spending ridiculous amount of money and to keep parity amongst the team. And there's a bunch of different explanations for why they do it, but it's not something new to any of the American fans out there who follow American sports.
Is that to allow Kroenke to operate because he doesn't like spending any money?
Yeah, it's all on Kroenke. I feel like all of this is just some big, crazy conspiracy by the Kroenkes to spend less money on our squad.
Yeah.
I'm trying to. Someone's put a question in the chat on Facebook, but it's not showing up on my Facebook. That's very odd. Anyway, so I'll have to come back to that one. Yeah, just do you think salary cap would work? Because for me, as long as you monitor it strictly and you go right at the moment, I think the highest paid player in the world is Messi on 600 grand a week. I think Bale's on about 500 grand a week. And then they go for the whole of Europe next season, the maximum you can pay anybody is 500,000. The season after 400,000. Keep bringing it down to you're on about 200,000. That'd take a few years to get it down to that, and then you could build towards that. Is that realistic, or is that just me talking jibber jabber?
It's logistically extremely difficult because you already have players who are on contracts that are going to violate the terms of what you just said in the next season. So things they would need to take those into consideration. There would need to be kind of like a grandfather in where maybe like if you're as the implementation of this new rule and this new cap, if you're at a certain amount of money that you're making through your salary, then it doesn't apply to you. But going forward, any new salaries, that's how they would have to do it. So there's going to be logistical, weird contractual things that are going to happen because of that. But would it be something that could be implemented across the league that would benefit smaller teams? Yes, because there'd be more parity. So I think that it's something that would benefit the league as a whole, in my opinion. But actually getting everyone to agree to do that is going to be very difficult, considering the pull that these big teams have in these kind of football governing bodies. Whether you think that's the right way or the wrong way, they're the ones that are going to dictate a lot of this conversation and drive the conversation on this. And you bet your ass they don't want to have a salary cap because they want to be able to outspend the people down the road and win major European trophies. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with what you said there, John, to be honest. Like you say, and Dani alluded to it with the way that people got around financial fair play. The rich clubs have got enough money that they'll find some way around the salary cap. But yeah, that's their general salary that they get now in lines with the rules of the new salary cap, but we'll pay them something for image rights or some other way of getting away around it, or they'll pay them some other way. And that would just be the case. Or like you say, the big clubs that dictate what Europa do won't allow it, like you say, because Man City aren't going to want to do that. PSG aren't going to want to do that. Real Madrid and Barcelona aren't going to want to do that. One of the banks in Spain are just going to give them a shitload of money so they can buy whatever they want again. Like it's a good idea. I'd like it, and I don't watch a lot of American sports, but when I have watched, I do like the sort of the salary caps, the fairness about how you get sort of teams like the Super Bowl, for example. It's not always the same. If the Super Bowl was in England, you'd see Man City would pretty much be there every fucking year, wouldn't they? Whereas with American sports, I think they've got a much more fairer way of doing it. But I just don't think that way of running a franchise is going to ever come across to Europe or football, personally.
What can we do about it, Fergus? Because you can't have football as most football fans go. We're never going to outspend Man City. Like I've said so many times, we offer a tenner for a player. Chelsea offer 20, Liverpool 30, Man United 40. Man City will offer £100 for the player. You can't have a sport where it's going to be the same teams going, we got the most money. Like Juventus were one of the first in Italy to go, we got our own stadium now. We're not paying the council. We've got massive amounts of money, although they just get all the players on free transfers and flog them on after. You can't have a football that is going to be attracting new fans. If you still go, unless you support Man City, you're really not going to ever have any glory in this country, because they're on the verge of doing another quadruple.
But wasn't that the case in the 80s with Liverpool? You had and the early 90s. Then you had the 90s and the noughties with Arsenal and Man United dominating everything. Man United spent and overspent against us. You've had Chelsea then come into the frame. Now Man City come into the frame. But then you got somebody like Leicester go and win the league. So that's the unique thing about the Premier League, and which the American football leagues don't have, because they don't have the relegation and promotion side of things. Is you're in the league, and then there's the draft where everyone gets an even. The lowest team gets to pick the best player, I think, and simplistically that. The only thing I would say, yes, I agree that it's probably unlikely that a salary cap would work, but now is the time, if you're ever going to think about introducing it, to introduce it. You mentioned Barcelona and Real Madrid, that the banks are going to chuck loads of money at them. I don't think so. The banks are actually shitting themselves and thinking these two clubs, they're probably too big to fail, but Bearing's bank wasn't too big to fail. So, they're in serious financial trouble. So there's a lot of financial institutions that would like to probably rein back in some of the Premier League teams and the European big powers. So with pandemic and lack of funds available, maybe the clubs will be a little bit more open to considering it. I don't know. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, you are. You did make a good point there. It was Man United and Arsenal dominate, and then Chelsea dominated, and then Abramovich was told, no, you're not spending all your money on your club anymore. You can help us pay for stadiums, or we'll take all your companies off you like they usually do. And then Man City's dominance, there's never been a dominant. They did the quadruple a couple of years ago. They're almost definitely going to do the quadruple now, because no one in the FA Cup is going to stop them.
Didn't do the quadruple. They haven't won the Champions League yet, have they?
No, I mean the Premier League, the FA Cup, the League Cup, and the Charity Shield, the domestic quadruple. Oh, okay. We won the Charity Shield this year, didn't we? Yes. So maybe they are on about... they're not going to do the quadruple.
I don't think anybody's ever done the quadruple.
We've stopped them. I always refer to it as a domestic, because I don't really care about the winning European trophies. I'd rather win the Premier League first. So the domestic quadruple isn't really a quadruple, is it? It's a triple.
That's Arsenal nowadays, isn't it? Let's not worry about Europe.
Yeah. Well, what are we going to win? Is it the Intertoto Cup we're going to be in next season? God, dear, that's a podcast all on its own. Oh, just call it the Cup Winners' Cup and be done with it. Right, an update here from Jonas, who put this in about 15 minutes ago. Update on Odegaard from Twitter Doctor, and he says, Odegaard ankle injury, right ankle rolled inwards, and as he was cutting in from the left on the ball, looks to be relatively mild. And someone else, I think it was Avon, has put further down. Oh dear, I've gone and lost it now. Avon, where are you? Avon, wave. Oh, here we go. Avon, Norway's manager, confirms Martin Odegaard hasn't suffered a serious injury, and he expects him to be available for Norway's next game.
Whew. I hate internationals. I absolutely hate internationals.
I couldn't give a shit.
Especially when they're pointless friendlies most of the time.
Oh, Sophie's there. Hello, Sophie. I don't know why I said that in a northern accent, because she's not northern. Here we go. We've got Jarbar saying something in Russian. It says "Are you" next to it. Hopefully that's hello, gentlemen. Are you having a good day? Not something horrible. But how are we supposed to know? Because
you could be arranging a fight in a forest somewhere or something like that.
Yeah, I've missed some of your questions because I had to go all the way back up to get Jonas's message before it disappeared, because trying to find things. Here we go. Sophie said, "Hello, Mike Feinberg's secret lover." There we go. Right, we're going to move on to some. Sophie, let's do that in Stavros's accent. it's 2021, so I'd be put in internet jail if I did that in the matey peeps. Want some salad with that boss accent. Right, questions. Ellis, do you want to do some questions?
Yeah, go for it. I'll fire some questions at the guys.
If I highlight the one that's on Facebook that I can't go and cut and paste from Facebook yet, talk amongst yourselves, because there's a lot of people. You're all being lovely, of course, putting stuff in here. There's one, I've got to look for a Facebook. Oh, here we go. It's on the screen now, Ellis. So do that one first, then go and do the other ones that you've cut and pasted into the chat.
Cool. I'll go because Fergus is top right. I'll start with Fergus. David Lieberman on Facebook says, what is your estimated percentage chance we can sign Odegaard permanently, given the latest Real Madrid statements and any other factors? I'm imagining that's what that says after the ... I didn't hear or see the Real Madrid statements. Have you?
Yeah, there's something about Real Madrid have said that they're going to make him a key part of the setup for next year. Personally, I think it's probably part of the dance that is they want to maximize what they can get for him. We're going to play it down and say, yeah, all right, whatever. And we'll try and see what we can get him for. What's the chance? David, I'd say it's got to be probably 40% in favor, 60% against. What would I like him to sign? Yes, I would like him to sign. And I think we should pull out the stops. But it's all in Real Madrid's hands and Stan Kroenke's hands if see how deep his pockets are.
Would you take him if Real Madrid also made us take Ceballos as well?
Yeah, because then you could just sell Ceballos on the following window, even if you just give him away.
Just give him away for free. Can't you now?
Yeah.
You've done your job.
Ceballos I've never rated. He's had 1-2 games that was good. The Burnley game, the second or third game for us. And I know people were delighted when he signed an extra year-long loan. I was nonplussed over it, and I'm being proven right in that because he's not cutting the mustard for us. He's as bang average as Arsenal are right now.
I think it was sensible to extend, given that we didn't really have much money. But yeah, he's definitely not warranted a permanent signing or another loan extension from his performances. Right, moving on, John. I've got one here from Avon Ted. He says, "What areas do we feel most need upgrading in the summer?"
Definitely the midfield. I think Xhaka has been doing excellent especially in the second part of the season. But when you look at what the alternatives are to Xhaka, we don't really have any that are going, especially if we're trying to push for a top four. And it's arguable whether Xhaka is a player that can get us into the top four. I personally think he is, but I think that there's a good argument that we're going to need an upgrade there. So that's probably one of the first places I'm going to look. And then, I want to look up, I think unless Arteta's figured out something, we're going to need something at right back. I don't think Bellerin is the future of the right back position here. I think that, nor do I think Cedric or Chambers necessarily, although Chambers did have a good game. So I think that if we're going to start at looking at what we need, it's going to be that midfield position and right back position.
Nice. Dani, do you want to answer any questions, or shall I just move
If you really want me to, I'm busy pressing buttons.
Well, you put the Twitter question up on the little window there and then took it away. So I'll let you answer that one. I know you can read, but for everyone listening at home. From the Twitch, A. Claudius says, "Is Hector finished at Arsenal, and will we miss him as a player?"
I think the fact that he has been dropped by Arteta, and we've had two other players come in, and both of them do everything that Arteta doesn't do. Someone put in the chat that Chambers was at fault for the first. His defending for the first West Ham goal was terrible because he was getting so far forward. But I think the players are coming in that are doing much better for me. Bellerin for me was broken as soon as the one special thing that he could do was run at the speed of light. And once that was taken away from him, his ability to track back when he was going forward has gone, because he used to be able to beat you going forward with the ball and if you fucked up, he'd beat you running back to get to the ball. He can't do that anymore. He's broken. He needs to go and play in a Farmers League. Luckily, he's still quite young. Was it 26, 27, something like that? And he's a solid defender. He could go and play in La Liga for Barcelona. They'll get him for 10, 15 million. and save us a fortune on the wage bill. And he's been a fantastic servant to us, but yet another player who was broken and his rehabilitation went wrong. And I asked why he runs with a stiff back. Someone said because of his injuries, he had to learn to rerun in a different way so he doesn't keep injuring himself. And I think he was another one of those players that that part of their problem was, apart from having the shit kicked out of them every day, I know Theo and Iwobi and they were so quick that when they come down to the end of the pitch, they were slowing down too quickly and putting too much pressure on their tendons, Achilles, and all those other things. I don't know what they do. And yeah, so we broke him, and now we need to get rid of him because he'd be third choice. And that's only because I don't know who third choice in the reserves could be. I know we've got Lopez who plays left back, but yeah, get rid of him. Get some decent money for him. He's been a great servant to the club, and I'd be sad to see another player what could have been. But if you look at it, if he was that good, why hasn't he played for Spain more? I think he's got 4 or 5 caps whilst playing for one of the best teams in England, and at times one of the top teams in Europe back in the glory days when we used to win games in Europe in the big league.
Oh, it's a shame.
Yes, he's gone.
Oh, sorry. It's a shame because I do like Bellerin. I'm a big advocate of him, but I think I can't.
What do you like about him, though? What is it that you like? Is it his football ability, his defending ability, or his snazzy dressing and great haircuts?
Yes.
I think from a purely footballing point of view, I agree with you, Dani. He probably needs to go. I don't think he fits in with what Arteta wants. And I also think he probably has lost a little bit of something like the speed, and a bit more than just his speed. He's lost a bit since the injuries that he's had. It's a shame. But as a person, as like a character, I think he's a great character. I think he is someone who's probably good around the dressing room. He's, for me, and again, this is just a purely opinion thing, and a lot of people probably disagree, I think as a person, he's a bit more interesting than your average football player or a young football player. So for me, that's just something I like about him, but it has no bearing on whether he's good for Arsenal at all. So realistically, from that point of view, yeah, you're probably right, Dani. We should be looking to move him on if he doesn't fit. But anyway, less of that. Next question, I'll go with, where is it? From Matt Roberts, coming to you, Fergus. Actually, I think I'll ask all three of you this, but I'll start with Fergus. Who has been the worst player so far and the most improved?
Most improved is probably easy. Bukayo Saka is probably the most improved. Well, he was already very good, I suppose. So if you could put Pepe and Willian into there of recent form, but I'd stick with Saka. Although he came from a high start because he finished the season quite high last season, but he's continued to do that. Considering the amount he's getting played and how knackered he looks sometimes, he still turns up, he still runs, he still goes. There's plenty of players. You could also mention in dispatches as well. Smith Rowe has come from nowhere and made a firm place in the starting 11. Least improved or worst player. It's got to be, you chuck your armband on the ground. It's always going to be there. Xhaka's always going to be in there for me. But taking that aside, probably Bellerin's got to be in with a shout on it just because of how he's gone downhill. I think it's harsh on him because I like the guy and what you said about him being interesting. I watched his documentary and I found it really, really good. Probably only because the way he seems his fitness and his career is tailing off. But you could put Ceballos in there as well. It's difficult because we haven't got loads of fantastic players and we haven't got loads of really, really crap players. We've got a lot of really average players. So yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question? Yeah,
it does. I hate the worst player question. I don't like answering that. But well done on giving it a go. John, your most improved player and your worst player, if you want to answer that one.
Yeah. So, I mean, throwing the armband aside, I think Xhaka's actually been our most consistent and one of the best players this season. But
I just it in.
Yeah, no, I got you. In terms of what's going on over here? Oh, twisting his ankle. Okay. In terms of most improved, I would have to say Willian. And the reason I say Willian is because this is a guy that went from absolute, like, why is he even on the team sheet? Why is he even here anymore? To, okay, he's actually making a contribution when he comes on here. And it's only been a small amount of time. So I don't want to say most improved overall. I would go with someone like Smith Rowe. But I feel like in terms of where he was recently to where he is now, which is a decent squad player, it seems like that would be most improved. Worst player for me has been Ceballos, and not only has he been the worst player for me this season, but he's also declined in his performances. He was actually fairly good last season. We were really excited when he signed again for us, and I don't know what's going on. Maybe because I don't know. I'm not going to speculate. Maybe it's he's not getting enough game time or whatever's going on with him right now. He's absolutely been very poor for us. And has not just poor, but decisions he's made have directly led to more goals than I think anyone on our side this season, just from his mistakes. So I think that there's a better player there than what we're seeing from him. But when we're saying someone that's gotten worse or is just not playing well, for me it's Ceballos. And I don't like those either, by the way. I like to be positive when I can, because Ceballos isn't a bad player and he's better than he has been playing, but I mean, whenever you're seeing him on the pitch, it's just like he's either not contributing or he's making mistakes.
Good save. Dani, your most improved and your worst player, if you'd be so kind.
Most improved is going to be probably ESR, like a lot of people have said in the chat, but it's hard for Saka to improve, although he has, because he's such a magnificent player. I think the one thing that Saka has improved most, which he needed to, was his goals and his assists. That's the one thing we were saying last season. He had all the tricks and the skills and the pace and the vision and the ability. We just needed to build on that, and he has built on that. Whereas Smith Rowe has come through, and that's another part of his game that we'll be wanting from him next season. And the worst player, I'm gonna have to agree with John and say Ceballos, because I think Ceballos' problem is he the water carrier? Is he the 10? Is he the go and break up play? He does all of those jobs. And I think if you ask a player to do all three of those jobs, then a master of, someone would say.
Jack of all trades, a master of none.
There you go. That should be that. He should have a T-shirt with that on it. It's his own fault for being a half decent player that Arteta has got him to do all those different jobs. Whereas you wouldn't ask Smith Rowe to go and do all of those lot. You wouldn't ask Odegaard to do them. You wouldn't let Xhaka do them. And Partey probably could do them, but you're not going to get Partey to do them. Even Elneny only does one, possibly two jobs, and Ceballos does them all. So I'm going to say Ceballos, but I feel bad about that because he is he's just doing what he's been asked to do, and he's just been unlucky. And when you, like Fergus was saying earlier, he's been partly at fault for 3 goals recently. That's got to weigh in on it as well. And the uncertainty about your future, because he's been living in London for 2 years, and Real Madrid are $1 billion in debt. And is he coming in? Is he going? You've seen your mate from Real Madrid come in, and suddenly he's the Arsenal darling. And meanwhile, he's not even, he's a sub player. Yeah, I feel sorry for him, but it's going to have to be him, because towards the end of last season, he was brilliant. And the beginning of the season against Newcastle, he was brilliant. But yeah. Have you got one, Ellis?
Well, Ceballos didn't feel much love, is he, tonight? I
like
think you
him.
all make very good arguments. It's difficult. I sort of agree with what Fergus said, really. Like, there's a lot of average to below average players this season, so it's hard to decipher. Like John said that Willian's improved a lot, but until recent months, Willian has to be up there as probably the worst player of the season. Pepe's gone through patches. Aubameyang's gone through patches. Xhaka's made mistakes. Louise had made mistakes. Ceballos has made mistakes. Leno has made mistakes. There's a good handful of players there that are all vying for it. Again, I don't really like those questions. I don't really like to single out anyone in particular, but just really all your arguments have probably convinced me that, yeah, Ceballos. But if I can defend the poor guy, you're probably right, Dani. His head's probably not there at the minute. He's got to be thinking about, well, this isn't my club. I'm done here now. And not only that, the club that have loaned me here have also loaned another player. So it's essentially like Arsenal going, yeah, we got Ceballos, but actually Real Madrid have got a better player that we can use. So that, I think that probably plays into it a bit. But yeah, I probably agree with all you guys. I think Ceballos is probably, as it stands at the moment, is probably our worst player.
How about a special mention for Aubameyang? I mean, like we're
he's
talking
still
about
our top goal scorer.
We're still our top goal scorer, but I mean, and if you look at the difference between last season and this season, it's night and day. And it seems like it started getting a little bit better, but then it just again, I don't know what's going on with him, what's going through his head. We're here, but we're talking about even off the field, there's stuff going on with him. So while I do think it's Ceballos from a purely I think he's kind of done here, like you said, perspective, I think Aubameyang gets an honorable mention here. I don't like these kind of questions.
No, and you'll always there'll be people. I'm not looking at the chat box right now. I'm looking at our private chat with the questions in, but I'm sure there'll be people in the chat box that will be pissed off, or people who'll be listening, going, "What are you talking about?"
You're right, John. Aubameyang is seriously up there as probably the worst performing player for us at this moment in time, but none of us are going to name him, are we? It's a shit question. Let's move on.
That's why I gave him an honorable mention, because it's hard to say that your captain and this new legend at the club is doing that poorly. But yeah, let's move on. I agree.
Moving swiftly on from that shit question that's probably pissed off a lot of listeners. I'll go to you, Fergus, I think, with this question here from Phil Macker. He says, as we are playing without fans, why don't we play a couple of games at Highbury?
Phil, I don't know if you've been to North London recently, but Highbury does have some greenery on the pitch at the moment. It's also got some lovely glass sculptures. It's got an underground car park, and it's got the residents that can sit there and have a coffee and have some outdoor space. And some benches and stuff like that. It's a gardens for the flats that are at Highbury. So unfortunately, we can't do that.
Well done on answering that question. That's one of those questions that you read and you think, oh, this person's going to say something really serious. And then you get to the second part of the question and you go, oh, shit. John, I've got a question here from Craig. He's put, who would you sell this summer?
Who would I sell this summer? All right. Well, I think we could sell Aubameyang. I think we could sell Bellerin. I think we could sell. I think that's pretty much what I'm willing to do. I mean, we could sell a Pepe, but I feel like he's in the Arteta's plans. Pepe. Obviously Luis could theoretically go. But if I was looking at where can we start selling, I would look at Bellerin and Aubameyang. And I'm going to go with Bellerin and Aubameyang. Well, Willian, I mean, yeah, if we could sell Willian, I would sell Willian but he just signed a new contract. No one else wanted to take a 3-year deal with him. He wanted to stay in London, so I don't think he's going to be going anywhere unless he's going back to Chelsea, which I'd be okay with. But I'm looking at players that we can realistically see leaving in the summer. I think Aubameyang is one that would surprise people to leave, but I could see it happening. And Bellerin, I think, is another one that I think we could see go.
John, Aubameyang or Lacazette? Lacazette's got 1 year left on his contract. He's 30 years of age. We'd probably realise more money for Aubameyang than we would for Lacazette. But
I think that both of them are up there in terms of the age factor. So I don't know if there's much of a distinction between that in relation to whether age is a factor. But I think Lacazette is another one that could potentially go. I think as far as form goes and usefulness to the team right now, Lacazette's been doing it a lot better than Aubameyang has. So, when you factor in not only the performances on the pitch this season, but kind of what we're hearing about what's going on off the field, it wouldn't surprise me to see someone like Aubameyang go. And it's someone that we can get money for. And it's a position that I think that we can kind of improve in the sense that if he's not playing the way that Arteta is going to want to play, or he doesn't even know if he wants to be centrally or on the left or even on the right now, apparently, it's just one that I can see happening. I don't know right now off the top of my head, maybe who would bring in someone like an Edouard from Scotland.
I understand that we've got a clause in his contract. If at the end of next season we haven't got Champions League football, he can go, and he doesn't get that 3rd-year extension. He can just walk. So if that is true, then it makes it even more an option if he's not on form to consider getting rid of him this summer.
Yeah, right. And in addition to maximizing contracts, you just have to look at what players can you actually get a value from that you can reinvest in areas that need it. Right off the bat, I think we need an upgrade in the right back position. So selling Bellerin to get another player that's going to fit Arteta's system a little bit better is absolutely makes sense in my opinion. So,
and if you got rid of Lacazette or Aubameyang, it might give an opportunity for Martinelli to come into the squad.
That as well, correct.
Or Bellerin, another player that people have been clamouring to get a start or get some minutes, that might offer him a way into the first team.
Someone mentioned Guendouzi. That's another one that I forgot. Not even thinking about that, but that's another player that if Arteta doesn't see him in his system, is definitely a player who's talented by all accounts, well, by many accounts, that it definitely doesn't seem to be fitting in here very well.
Yeah. So we've been going an hour and 45. Bloody hell. There's 2 more questions. I'll go Dani, then I'll finish with Fergus. Dani, moving on a bit, sort of segues from what John said by selling Bellerin and Aubameyang. A, or AY, however you say his name, has put, if you can buy any right back, who would you get?
Oh, simple answer, the bloke at Norwich.
Yes. Good answer.
But I don't want Norwich to go back down again. Norwich is one of those perennial up and down teams that I want to see stay in because they're quite local to me and they're very local to Ellis. What's his name though? Max Aarons. There you go. I don't think we need one. I think with Chambers and Cedric there, that is a position we don't need to do. We need to put all of our money into getting a striker. Someone who is going to be, I mean, like you were saying, John, with Alba for what least improved or the worst player of the season. Arteta as a manager is probably looking at that and going, last season you scored a goal every other game. This season you're scoring a goal every 3 or 4 games. Now, just think where we'd be if he could have spread those 9 goals that he's short over the space. I mean, last season we were rubbish. And if he could sprinkle those goals from Aubameyang throughout any of these games, how many more points do we have this season? And you got to look at that and go, Aubameyang, really, you've let the manager down, which is why I think there's a little bit of WWF style heat with those 2 now.
And we're scoring goals now because we're having midfield involvement.
From midfield.
Odegaard and Emile Smith-Rowe transformed that. But in the beginning of the season, remember we said we need to start off strong? Aubameyang was absolutely missing, and we weren't getting goals from anywhere else. And anyway.
It's killing you to stop there.
I don't know if it was you, John, that made this earlier, but I can remember last season when Aubameyang was scoring loads of goals, but we weren't really creating chances, but he was sort of getting, like, I'm not really good with my stats, but I imagine his expected goals were probably quite a lot lower last season compared to what the amount of goals he actually got, whereas it's been flipped on its head.
But everything for last season was everyone putting in crosses for Giroud still, even though he wasn't there. And Saka's going, the ball's out there, I can't get to it. Well, what are you doing? No. Now,
why are we crossing to a 5'4" Frenchman? What are we doing?
Yeah. And now you've got all these wonderful playmakers around him. How many seasons have we gone with midfielders going, our entire midfield has scored 4 goals between them? With Saka, I'm not going to list them. Everybody knows them. Now we're full of goals, full of assists, and Aubameyang should be going, nom, 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 nom. I'm 30 goals this season. And he's not. He's sat on the bench, sulking, counting his money.
That West Ham game, I watched a bit of it, like the highlights just before we came on the podcast, just sort of refresh my memory. And even in the highlights, I can't even remember him having a shot. I think one hit him in the shoulder. Maybe he did have a shot. I completely blanked it. But he was anonymous in the West Ham game. And that's not something I've ever really seen from Aubameyang before in an Arsenal shirt. Yes, he'd have quiet games and he'd pop up with a goal, but never like completely anonymous and then just being hoiked off.
Did you hear the Tuesday Club? Alan Davies was saying he made 3 runs in the first half. That means he did nothing for 45 minutes other than 3 quick runs, which means he stood still or something along those lines.
Right. Last question. Going to you, Fergus. It is, again, John alluded to this when he was answering the question from Craig on who we should sell. Formerly Nozza has put Guendouzi back next season or sold. What's your thoughts on that?
Glendoozy's a lovely malt whiskey from the lowlands of Scotland. But Gwendozy, he for me, I've never been a huge fan. Yes, he is a very talented player. Yes, he's a very passionate player. I love when after the North London Derby, him hanging out at the Mercedes and all that sort of stuff. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. But I couldn't get on with him going to ground so easy, running after the referee, complaining, waving his arms round. And okay, for Arteta, the final straw was him putting his hand to the throat at Maupay at Brighton. I've seen worse things happen, and less action has been taken. He's having problems over in Germany, I believe, as well, with his attitude. A shame, really, but I would sell him. It will probably come back to bite us in a few years' time, but personally, I'd sell him.
Lovely. And John, seeing as the last question, would you like to add your thoughts to that as well?
Sure. I agree. I would sell him too. And really, if the cornerstone have been these non-negotiables for Arteta, the mentality of the team, the kind of maturity of the team, the togetherness of the team, having a personality like that just wouldn't suit us. I don't care how talented the player is. He's not so talented that his kind of antics would outweigh themselves to the point where it would be worth it. So I think right now he's a young player who's been getting a lot of press. He's been doing well by many accounts. I haven't obviously been watching him, but I've been, tangentially paying attention. If we can get a return on him, I think that we can make an upgrade in that position, which is an area of the pitch that we're going to need to upgrade with a player that fits Arteta's system and his mentality of what he wants from a mature side that's going to actually challenge for trophies and challenge for top four.
Nice. Well, that's the end of the questions, Dani. Back to you.
Just been having a look at the international results. See, Dusan Tadic has yet again been magnificent. A hat-trick of assists. And what else are I looking at? Belgium. Oh, they look good. I knew it's very rarely I can look at an international team and recognise all 11 players unless they're England. And Belgium I do. We're not. This isn't a Belgian podcast, is it, Ellis? It's not. We need to move on with it, don't we? Yes, it's an Abu Wonderland. Right, I think that's everything we've got done there. Right, final thing to do before you give a little nod to where you do other stuff. Gentlemen's nods. Does anybody have someone they want to give a little wave to and a nod and have a good day to?
Yes, please.
Go on, then.
Well, you all know him. It's Stefan Selby. I missed his question.
No.
Stefan, I'm really sorry that I didn't ask your question.
That's awful. We've got a celebration coming up, Ellis. This is the 5th time this year we're about to hit 7,000 subscribers on YouTube. Because every time we hit it, 10 fuckers unsubscribe, and then we're back down to under. So at one point we were at 7.01, then 7, then 697, 697, and we're back down to 69. Oh, but what I don't know, Ellis, is that we all get together and we all party every time we hit 7,000. So every time they get there and then they unget there isn't even a word. That's how much fun we have. So carry on doing that, you freeloading scumbags. Right, there's nobody wants to say hello to anybody. Oh, fair enough.
I want to give a shout out to that. What was the Stokes? Who was that? Whoever was
James Raoul Stokes.
I'm gonna give a shout out to him because that comment he made about the scissors literally made me crack my ass up. That was hilarious.
He's on the legendary Goonosphere podcast. It was him and Daniel and Jock and Simi Javel and Green Banton and Devon.
Funky shout out to you, man. That was some funny stuff today.
They are hilarious. Right. So we'll start with you, Fergus. Do you want to tell people, tell people where they can come and find you? I have got this all ready to go and put in our chat. Bing bong. There you go. That is Fergus's podcast. It's in the chat. Everybody go and click on it. They have got 444. And I like that. That's a nice set of same numbers. If you can just go and click on that and go and subscribe, because you'll be entertained. The last podcast I saw, you had Dan and Amanda on.
Yes.
You managed to get a word in between Amanda talking for constantly for 3 hours. You and Trevor on every show, and then you had Mike on 2 or 3 shows ago that I saw.
Yes.
Another one trying to get a word in with. You need a medal for trying to do that lot. So tell people about your podcast that you and Trev do, and some guests that you've had on recently, and who you hope to get on in the future.
Well, we generally just have fellow Gooners. Mike has been on. Amanda from Highbury Squad has been on. We've had Kevin Campbell, Lee Judges. We've even had Miami Gooner join us on the podcast. We're hoping to have yourself on soon, Dan and Ellis. You're welcome to come at any point as well if you like. Alcohol is generally required, so we normally have a beer and we just chat football. It's Guns and Yellow Ribbons on YouTube. It's Guns and Yellow Ribbons on Facebook and Guns and Ribbons on Twitter. We do a little bit of Instagram, but I'm really shit at it, really. But yeah, we'd love some subscribers. We're not in it for the money. We're just in it for a hobby. And that is the truth. Our strapline is by Arsenal fans for Arsenal fans. And that really is what it is. Thank you for having me on here and giving me the opportunity just to have a couple of minutes saying about it.
That's good. It's for people who haven't listened, it's very much like ABW, like the Gooners pod and a few of the others out there where it's just easy. Just friends having a chat, having a bit of a giggle. They have lots of people on. Just to go. How long?
An hour.
Yeah, hour and a half. We said until Ellis started to go ask 1,000 questions. Scumbag.
You asked if I want to give a shout out to anybody, and it's with Ellis in the chat as well. I've had quite a lot to do with the NHS over the last few months, between my wife having COVID and being in hospital, and I was in hospital with something. So everybody who does what they do for us people in the NHS, thank you very, very much. You are absolute heroes, and all the key workers from bin men to shopkeepers, but the NHS in particular, Jesus, it's a tough job, and I take my hat off to you. My wife works in primary care, but like the people who work in secondary care in the hospitals, that's tough, and it's flipping hot in there.
And that's not Ellis with all of his tattoos and his muscles making the place hot. Jashar has subscribed to your channel, Fergus.
Thank you.
If everybody can go and do it, I mean, there's 57. Geez, there was 70 a minute ago, you freeloading scumbags. Just go there and click on it and listen to a few shows. If you don't like it, do what you do with us and just unsubscribe and let us down. Because you NN Gooner has put Devon. It's Devon. And yeah, I know it's Devon. Devon's been on here quite a few times in sunny Atlanta. That used to be a decent MLS team. They're not anymore. They're scumbags.
I lived in Atlanta for 3 years, actually.
Is it better than Miami?
It's different than Miami.
Different.
They're qualitatively different. It's impossible to compare the two. Miami, there's nothing like Miami. Miami is another planet.
I've seen Dexter. I know all about Miami. You lot of freaks.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? Because you are one of somebody who comes on regularly as a guest, and I see you on a lot of pods. You talk a lot of sense, and you're a very good talker. And I do enjoy having a fellow bearded man on. But now there's 4 of us.
Yeah, we have some nice beards on this podcast today.
I was thinking the other day, when did I start growing a beard? I've had facial hair as long as I can remember, but I had a goatee until about 15 years ago, and then I just went, fuck it. And then 5 years after that, it became trendy. Become trendy. So now my laziness has paid off. So yeah, where can people find you? You
can find me at 305 Cast, and I hop around different people's podcasts. I used to have mine, but it's not been a thing. I just like to go and talk Arsenal with friends. So everything is just so busy nowadays, and you would think it's and you should be happy about that if anyone is out there who's not doesn't have that luxury. But it's a good thing and a bad thing. The bad thing is I don't get to do my podcast as much. The good thing is that I still have at least enough time to go talk with great people like you, and with this chat that's been hilarious today. I've been cracking up reading some of the stuff they've been saying. So thanks for having me on again. I like being on here.
Oh, thank you very much for coming on regularly. So we were talking earlier about FFP. I've put in the chat a link to Tom's latest podcast where he's talking about FFP. I should have taken more notice when I was trying to steal Tom's ideas, but then my brain decided not to let me. So yeah, go and listen to Tom's one. It's only 20 odd minutes, and he explains it perfectly. And he also has a little cry about his love child who hasn't played since signed for Red Bull Leipzig. Yep. Yeah, it makes Tom sad when you talk about that. Ellis, you freeloading, pot bashing scumbag. Where can people find you apart from around the back of the bins at Tesco's?
They can find me on Twitter, and it's my name and my surname. I don't do any other podcasts. You only let me on here.
You barely come on here, you scumbag.
I fucking work a lot. Leave me alone.
Oh, work, schmo. You don't do
Just
anything.
be nice like Fergus.
No, I ain't going to do that. That's too nice. Look, we're just about to hit the 2 hours. So I think it's time that we went. Thank you very much to everybody who watched tonight. There's at one point, there was 70 of you. And for a podcast, that's pretty good because normally we get maybe 150 of you watching when we lose to a team from Birmingham. So for that many to turn up for a podcast, that's very kind of you. Thank you very much to all of my wonderful guests and Ellis. Cheers, Fergus. Cheers, John.
Thank you.
And that's it. God knows when we're going to be back. We might do a gaming podcast because we all love gaming, and I'm knee deep in Valheim at the moment. And other than that, we have got nothing coming up for you anytime soon. So there's only one way to end this podcast, isn't there, Ellis? So I'll leave the final words of this magnificent podcast over to Ellis with his favourite phrase.
Piss off, Carl.
What a wonderful way to end a podcast. Look at that. Bye-bye.